Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving right into the ultimate 2026 Wealth Playbook. We're going to stack up the biggest financial gurus against the cold, hard economic realities we're facing right now. So, if you've been wondering whose advice actually holds up in today's wild economy, well, you're absolutely in the right place.
Here's our agenda for today. First, the 2026 economic reality. Second, Ramsey's death snowball method. Third, Kiyosaki's asset and liability playbook. Fourth, bogleheads and fire investing. And finally, number 5, the great geographic migration.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the 2026 economic reality.
You know, with the cost of basics like groceries and energy surging all over the globe, the really crucial question for 2026 is this: how can anyone actually build wealth when our everyday expenses just keep climbing? It's literally the very first hurdle every single investor has to clear. This pressure is perfectly illustrated by the latest USDA forecast. It shows that while the midpoint for food inflation is sitting around 1.7%, we've got unpredictable factors out there. Things like extreme weather events or new tariffs on metals used for food packaging, and those could easily push that inflation rate as high as 6%. So, the very foundation of your household budget, it's kind of sitting on shifting sands right now.
And to put that into perspective, the 2026 Social Security cost of living adjustment is sitting at just 2.8%. That means a lot of folks on fixed incomes are actively feeling the squeeze. Think about it. If your income is only growing at 2.8%, but your grocery bill suddenly spikes by 6%, you're losing ground. Fast.
Which brings us to Section 2, Ramsey's debt snowball method. To fight back against this economy, many turn to Dave Ramsey. He lays out these incredibly clear baby steps. You start with a $1,000 starter emergency fund, and then you aggressively attack your debts from smallest to largest. The key insight here is really fascinating. The math actually doesn't matter as much as the psychology does. Paying off that smallest balance first, it gives you a quick win, and then you roll that payment into the next largest debt, creating this massive snowball effect.
Now, Ramsey preaches a super strict no credit card rule. He warns that 1 in 4 Americans will swipe a card for an emergency they can't pay cash for, and that instantly turns a bad situation into a full-blown crisis thanks to high-interest debt. When your AC fizzles out or the car won't start, reaching for that plastic is a complete trap. And that is exactly why that starter emergency fund is absolutely critical before you do anything else.
Okay, moving right along to Section 3, Kiyosaki's asset and liability playbook.
Robert Kiyosaki really warns us about what he calls the middle-class trap. This is where buying a bigger house just leads to higher taxes, and your soaring liabilities end up swallowing any new income you make. He calls this the rat race. It's like you get a raise, so you go out and buy a nicer car, or maybe upgrade your furniture. Suddenly, sure, your income statement looks great, but behind the scenes, your balance sheet is a total disaster.
So what's the fix? Well, Kiyosaki's solution is the pay-yourself-first model. This is where your income is aggressively routed straight into your asset column before a single bill or tax is paid. Instead of paying everyone else first, you're funneling your money into income-generating real estate, index funds, or business ventures. Basically, you're building an engine that will eventually just pay your expenses for you.
He also heavily emphasizes the massive drag of taxes. He argues that leveraging illegal tax loopholes, exactly like the wealthy do, is absolutely critical for building up that asset column. Take a 1031 exchange, for instance. It lets you swap one real estate property for another without immediately paying taxes on the profit. Because here's the reality. The harder you work in a traditional job, the more you pay the government. The wealthy, however, mind their own business to minimize that burden completely legally.
Next up, Section 4, bogleheads and fire investing.
Now this is where things get really interesting, especially when we look at how to invest those assets. Dave Ramsey heavily promotes using his SmartVestor Pro financial advisors who typically take a 1% fee. But the boglehead community, they argue you are way better off just managing low-cost index funds yourself. Ramsey's camp will tell you the fee is totally worth it because an advisor acts like a behavioral coach, keeping you from panic selling when the market dips. The bogleheads, on the other hand, well, they look strictly at the compound math.
And here is the absolute crucial point the bogleheads make about that math. Over 30 years, a seemingly tiny 1% fee drag actually results in a staggering 25% loss to your total portfolio. Think about that for a second.
That isn't just some minor administrative cost. That is a massive percentage of your wealth. Wealth that could have been funding your early retirement, but is instead just handed right over to a middleman.
Now, for those of you utilizing that boglehead approach to retire early, especially looking ahead, managing your taxable income safely becomes incredibly vital. Why? Because you have to avoid the returning Affordable Care Act subsidy cliff and the massive health premiums that come with it. Listen, if you're navigating early retirement health insurance, the ACA Cliff 2026 is literally the ultimate trap. When those Obamacare subsidies 2026 rules expire, drawing down just one single dollar over the income limit could cost you thousands in lost subsidies. So you have to use precision strategies. For example, using a bridge account, pulling from your post-tax savings, your withdrawals don't count as taxable income and accidentally push you right off that cliff.
And that leads us into our final segment, Section 5, the Great Geographic Migration.
Data from the Philadelphia Fed reveals a massive ongoing migration out of high-cost, high-tax states, places like California, New York, and Illinois, and directly into more affordable havens like Florida, Texas, and North Carolina. We're seeing major metropolitan hubs like Los Angeles and Chicago actively losing residents to cities like Dallas, Tampa, and Phoenix. People are quite literally voting with their moving trucks. They're escaping these dense, expensive environments for regions where their salaries can just stretch so much further.
So this all begs the question, between snowballing your debt, dodging those advisor fees, precision planning your tax strategy, or simply packing up and moving across the country, which playbook, or even which state, will you choose to secure your financial future? Are you going to play defense, play offense, or are you just going to change the playing field entirely? Let that sink in. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.